they've clearly signaled at every turn that they're not looking for a war, particularly with the United States. And now, as you mentioned earlier, that we've brought carrier groups into the region, and I think sent a very strong message through all of our allies and really directly to the Iranians that we will retaliate on Israel's behalf if this gets out of hand. So I think that we're trying to deter Iran from taking the kind of steps that would really blow this conflict up. But again, it's just not really possible to control that outcome. So I think we're at a period of real danger here.
But we'll start with tonight's statement from the US President Joe Biden, who said America is devoted to defending Israel and that Iran will not succeed. His statement follows a White House warning that an attack is a real and credible threat and could be imminent. Iran's supreme leader has warned that it will retaliate against Israel for an airstrike on its consulate in Damascus 2 weeks ago. Israel has said it is ready defensively and offensively, with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stating, "We will harm those who harm us." Let's talk to Frank Lowenstein, who is former US Special Envoy for Israeli-Palestinian negotiations and former US Special Envoy for the Middle East. This is your territory, Frank. How concerned are you tonight?
I'm quite concerned. I think it's probably inevitable that Iran is going to strike Israel. I think they feel like they need to send a very strong message in response to the killing of their generals. And I just don't think they want a war, but I don't think it's possible to control the outcomes here. So I think we're at a period of great risk in terms of massive regional escalation.
When you say you think they don't want a war, why do you say that? Why do you feel that they don't want to go further than just making a statement?
Because that's been the Iranian posture for the last 6 months, really, since the beginning of the war. They've clearly signaled at every turn that they're not looking for a war, particularly with the United States. And now, as you mentioned earlier, that we've brought carrier groups into the region, and I think sent a very strong message through all of our allies and really directly to the Iranians that we will retaliate on Israel's behalf if this gets out of hand. So I think that we're trying to deter Iran from taking the kind of steps that would really blow this conflict up. But again, it's just not really possible to control that outcome. So I think we're at a period of real danger here.
But Iran's foreign minister earlier this week, Foreign Minister Hossein, says that we've got to respond, and he seemed to blame the United States for giving Israel the green light for a strike on its building in Damascus, and they feel you guys are partly to blame. How seriously do you think the United States will take that?
Yeah, we're taking it very seriously in the sense that we have sent the message back to the Iranians, and this has been in the press, that we had nothing to do with it. In fact, we didn't even know the Israelis were going to do it until after it had happened. So this is not a raid that we wanted. I can tell you that I think the White House is pretty frustrated that Bibi would take that step when he did.
Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu, Frank? Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu should have run it by the US before doing it?
Well, yes, of course I do, but I don't think there's any chance he was going to, because you don't ask questions that you know the answer is going to be no to. And I think Netanyahu's got his own political agenda that has nothing to do with the United States. In fact, countering the United States and defying the United States seems to be to his benefit politically, in his assessment anyway.
What do you make of the fact that tonight Iran's Lebanese ally Hezbollah announced that it has sent 40 rockets across the border into northern Israel?
Yeah, 40 rockets is just the beginning. Hezbollah has an arsenal of long-range precision missiles that are 1,000 times more powerful than what Hamas is ever able to muster. So they're sending a few rockets across the border now. That's the beginning. The question is, how much further are they going to go? Do they start sending missiles towards population centers in Israel? Or I think more likely they'll target military facilities and try not to kill anybody. If you remember, after the United States assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC, the Iranians responded by a rocket attack against a U.S. base in Iraq that didn't kill anybody. So that's the way they send a message without escalation. So I think they're probably trying to figure out now how to attack some targets within Israel that will send the message, but not kill so many Israelis as to necessitate a response by Israel and the United States.
And I see, Frank, that Axios is reporting that Iran has warned the U.S. to stay out of the fight with Israel or face a direct attack on its troops. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we're terribly concerned about that. I think that's more or less just diplomatic bluster. We only have two bases, one in Syria and one in Iraq, and they attacked the one in Iraq already after Soleimani. So I don't think that's a huge risk for us. I think they're trying to tell us, to back off and not to weigh in on Israel's behalf. But there's no way we're going to listen to them on that. We're squarely in Israel's corner on the question of Iran. Now, what that's served to do is to put aside a lot of major differences we had with the Israelis over the humanitarian situation in Gaza, over the potential invasion of Rafah. So to some extent, it's really served Netanyahu's purposes in a lot of ways that I think are very frustrating for the United States.
What about all the choreography, the diplomatic choreography of all of this? Because there have been calls between the foreign ministers of the UK, Australia, Germany, and the Iranian counterparts this week. Indeed, yesterday, there's back channels going on between the US and the Chinese, trying to get them to persuade the Iranians not to go too far. How can you explain how all this works?
So yeah, I think it's in this case it's relatively straightforward. I think we're sending the messages publicly and privately, trying to get as many of our allies and people that are influential with Iran to caution Iran about going too far in their response. I think we've accepted that they're going to respond. The question is just, do they do that in a way that necessitates a response by Israel and by extension the United States? So I think what we're really trying to do is get everybody who will talk to us and who will listen to us to tell the Iranians to keep this within reasonable boundaries so that we don't have to go to the next step.
And Frank, what do you think reasonable boundaries looks like? What's the red line which the Iranians should not cross if they don't want a response by either Israel or the US? What do you think?
Yeah, well, to simplify it, I would say don't kill civilians, right? I think if there's a mass casualty event involving Israeli civilians, then you're likely to see a response by Israel. But if they just target military facilities or they send bombs into places that are going to do a lot of visible damage but not actually kill a lot of people, that's the kind of thing that Israel can just sort of accept and move on. But I think, as I said, that's much easier said than done. Talking about targeting military facilities and hoping nobody's there. I mean, it's a dangerous game, and that's why I think nobody really knows how this is going to play out.
And Frank, finally, where is the peace process in all of this? There was a lot of anticipation, excitement, a discussion over meetings, and then possible hostages and prisoners being exchanged, and then it went quiet.
Yeah, I think that the ceasefire negotiations have been really sidelined at this point. As I know, has been widely reported, Israel killed Hania's children and grandchildren in Gaza, and that to me was a message that they have no interest in negotiating a ceasefire. You don't kill the children and grandchildren of your adversary if you're trying to actually negotiate a deal with them. And I'm not sure Hamas wants a deal right now either. I think they think Israel's on the ropes. They're fighting with the United States. The world is condemning them for the humanitarian situation there. So I'm not sure either side really wants a ceasefire right now. And in any event, it's all on hold until we figure out how this Iran situation plays out.
All right. Frank Lowenstein, former U.S. Special Envoy for Israeli Palestinian negotiations and former U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio.